evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and while our finals hopes may be all but buried, there were still signs of life from the red and blue as the D snapped over a month-long losing streak with a solid win over the Kangaroos at the MCG. George can't be with us again tonight, but B-Man is joining me all the way from Cambodia to dissect the match. Good evening, or good afternoon, B-Man.
Good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, Demonlanders. Technology has been the bane of us. We've done well to connect. I'm here in very hot and humid Siem Reap in Cambodia. Special Demonland correspondent from the Southeast Asia. Apologies for that. I had mute on. I would have thought after COVID and all of the many Teams meetings and whatnot that I'd remember to turn off the mic muting. But yes, great win, Andy.
Fantastic win, and I can see you wearing a scarf there in the sweltering hot conditions of Cambodia. I should be wearing a scarf where I am.
Yeah, well, my wife bought me my first, actually that's not true, she bought me some Demons socks for Christmas, but she's just been to a market in Siem Reap and bought me a red and blue scarf for the podcast, so shout out Andrea, and yes, it's quite fetching, I must say.
It certainly is. A win. We haven't had a win in, 5 weeks, 6 weeks with the bye. It's good to get a win back. And I'm assuming you did watch it.
I did watch it, which was also a bit of a technological challenge, I must say. But yeah, I watched it live, and it was a frustrating first half, but terrific last half, and particularly the last quarter, obviously. But it's remarkable when you kick straight. I presume you went. It feels like it's been forever and a day since I've been to the footy and been to the MCG. So I'll miss next week as well, unfortunately. So it'll by the time I see a game at the MCG, it will seem like half the season since I've seen one. What was the atmosphere like? The crowd was 35,000, I heard.
Yeah, so last week I was saying we might struggle to get 20,000, but I was pleasantly surprised. And then I remembered it was the Kids Go Free day, which I think you sort of have to do for a late season Melbourne versus North Melbourne game. It's a good way to get people in the gate. And they had a whole lot of stuff outside for the kids, and obviously kids get in free, so that 35,000 the gate receipts probably won't be great, but it was good to have a lot of people. And credit to the North Melbourne supporters. They were losing by, 6 goals, 7 goals at the end, and the majority of them, I think, stuck around. You didn't see many people leaving, so good on them for doing that. But maybe they're just used to it after a decade of mediocrity and being at the bottom. Maybe 30 points might be a win. Down by 30 points might be like a win to them.
Well, I think we've lost, to be honest. We can't really be patronising to other footy clubs anymore. So that was our grand final. So it was good to have a win.
Our grand final is this week against Carlton. That's my grand final.
That's your grand final. I take it you're going?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know what obviously I wasn't there, so I'm not sure what the energy in the crowd was like, but I'm not sure if you thought the same thing, but it just seemed really noticeable that the players were really enjoying the game and enjoying themselves on the field. I don't know if that came across, or did you think the same thing?
Well, it's hard to take because I haven't watched any of the replay, so you don't really get to see the expressions on their faces or whatever, but I trust that you did see that and you noticed that, and I would assume after a month of losing 5 games and the crap year that it's been, to have a win and sort of things seem to be clicking and working, and all right, not taking anything away from the opposition, but it was a weaker opposition, so maybe they were just having a bit of fun. So it was good to it's good to see.
I mean, it just seemed like they came out with an intent from the beginning to enjoy the game. There was lots of really, the celebration of goals. They were, Frida looked, he had a big smile on his face when he read the win properly. There was I thought there was a really good sort of sense of camaraderie in the side, which, you and I have watched these over the years have sort of subpar seasons, and we
Yeah.
limped to the line. And even last year, it felt a little bit sort of disconnected. And so I take it as a really positive sign that they still seem really connected and really united. And I did wonder afterwards, I'd forgotten, to be honest, that it was Goody's 200th game as a D's coach. So actually, no, he gets credited with a game for Adelaide. For Essendon. Did he coach a game for Essendon when Phil?
So I did. I think he did coach a game. So I saw something online today saying that because it's Clary's 200th coming up this week, and it said there was a stat about coaches to coach their 200th game with a player playing their 200th game. And I thought, didn't Goody have his 200th last week? So maybe this week, the North Melbourne was his 200th as a coach, and then this week against Carlton,
it's a double
200th
celebration.
So next week
it must be his 200th
for Melbourne.
Melbourne coach as a Melbourne coach, and I wonder where that puts him up in the all-time list for most number of. I should have asked you that beforehand, shouldn't I? But maybe my thought was, given it was a celebration of Goody to an extent, that I think it was notable that that energy of the players, and there's a lot of talk about there's obviously, we talked about it last week, and a lot of talk about Goody's future, and you couldn't argue that he's ever lost the players. And as I said, I mean, there's been any number of seasons where the D's have limped to the end of the season. We've been out of final contentions, this early, sometimes earlier, obviously. And you can see it on the field. You can see the sort of, and even I felt that last year that it didn't seem like a great energy as we approached the end of last season. And it just felt like that they were up and about. They were really celebrating each other's goals. A few times there were some laughs on the field, and so I thought that was, and maybe part of that was playing for Goody.
So Goodwin is the fourth coach, the fourth most amount. Third is Neil Danaher on 235. Second is Frank Checker Hughes at 258. So you should know who the number one coach is.
The Red Fox.
Norm Smith.
Yes, well, that's ironic because there's a connection to Sam Riep, because I had coffee this morning in the Little Red Fox coffee shop. There you go. It all comes back to Melbourne. And I was at the Sam Riep Museum, and I happened to see that one of the there's what's his name now, or their name? One of the deities is. Let's have a look here. I did tag it for exactly this purpose. I'm just looking here at my thread. Should have prepared this earlier. It is Asura, who's a demon in one of the temple, in one of the Angkor Wat in the Angkor period. That's Asuras. So I thought, while I'm here, is the mighty Asuras.
I'm sure most cultures and most religions have some form of demons in them. So,
but this Asura was red and blue. So
there you go. That makes all the difference. All right, well, let's get into the housekeeping. So I do each week ask our loyal listeners to support the podcast by leaving us a 5-star review. Perhaps, you can get some people in Cambodia to leave us a review. We truly appreciate the feedback, and as a token of our gratitude, we do give you a well-deserved shout-out to you for taking that time to share that review. Blinky Might writes, tuning into the Demonland podcast each week feels like catching up with old friends at the pub after a game. There's banter, frustration, hope, and plenty of footy smarts. It's genuine, unfiltered, and exactly what every Demon fan needs, win, lose, or draw. The Demonland podcast is my weekly therapy session. Smart, passionate, and grounded in reality of supporting the Ds. It's a perfect way to make sense of the chaos. And thanks for that great review, Blinky Mate. Very much appreciated, and keep that feedback coming. Leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we will give you a shout out on the show. If you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you want to leave some feedback, ask a question, share a comment, you can do that in our podcast post or slide into our DMs. You can download and listen to the Demonland podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcasting apps. And also, if you want to listen to the show and watch it at the same time, cartoon versions of us, just search for Demonland Podcast to find our channel and subscribe. And if you haven't checked out our forum at demonland.com, head on over there, sign up. It's completely free. You can join in the conversation with fellow D supporters from across Australia and all around the world. We're not live tonight, so we've got no calls and no chat room. B-Man is also away, as he said, next week as well, so there'll be no live show next week. We're just going to record and put it into your favourite, wherever you get your podcast from. You'll be able to get it there. Let's get straight into the match overview. Melbourne finally broke their 5-game losing streak in emphatic fashion, overpowering North Melbourne by 36 points at the MCG. The match carried added emotional weight following the Demons' shocking collapse to the Kangaroos earlier in the season, a result that many felt was the beginning of the end of Melbourne's 2025 campaign. Sunday's contest, dubbed Revenge by Demonland contributor Whispering Jack, was a chance to set the record straight. And led by veterans Jake Melksham and skipper Max Gawn, they did just that. So Jake Melksham continued his remarkable late-season renaissance with another 5-goal haul, his second in 3 weeks, and a clear sign that the 33-year-old is not done yet. He overcame a hip knock in the second quarter and a sore elbow to return after halftime and dominate the forward line, kicking 3 of his 5 majors in the last quarter to put the game beyond doubt. Bailey Fritsch also played arguably his best game of a frustrating season, booting 3 goals and setting up another 3 in a classy all-round performance. His long-range conversion in the third term helped spark the Demons after a tense first half. After being outpointed by Tristan Sherry in their earlier clash, Max Gawn responded with dominance, controlling the ruck with authority and providing silver service to his midfield. Gawn not only won the hitouts decisively, but impacted around the ground with crucial intercepts and leadership. He wasn't afraid to stand up for his teammate either, remonstrating fiercely after Tom Sparrow was knocked unconscious in a sickening collision with Sherry late in the match. Christian Petrarca was everywhere, collecting 31 disposals, 14 contested possessions, 7 clearances and a goal. He was ably supported by Jack Viney and Clayton Oliver, who both lifted in key moments. Youngster Harvey Langford is looking very much at home on the MCG, showing poise and a hard edge when required. The D's dominance in contested ball and stoppages helped shift the momentum back after North closed the gap in the third term, largely thanks to a powerful burst from Cam Zohar, who kicked 3 goals in 8 minutes, some from some questionable free kicks. Alongside Melksham and Fritsch, the younger brigade of Demon forwards began to show real promise. Jacob Van Rooyen and Matthew Jefferson worked well in tandem, while Cade Chandler continued some steady form with 2 goals. Kasai Pickett, despite some early inaccuracy and close attention from tagger Will Phillips, still made an impact with 20 touches and a goal. And despite conceding 12 goals, Melbourne's defence, disrupted by a late withdrawal of Stephen May from illness, held up reasonably well. Tom McDonald was a steadying presence. Christian Salem was clean and creative across half-back. Caleb Windsor, who replaced Xavier Lindsay in the third term, added pace and a crucial late defensive touch, literally, when he prevented a goal on the line with a desperate lunge. The win was marred by the serious concussion suffered by Tom Sparrow, who was knocked out cold by a reckless arm from Tristan Sherry. The incident, which stopped play for several minutes, is expected to come under intense MRO scrutiny, and it has now. He's got 3 weeks for that, and I'm sure they'll take that to the tribunal. With 6 games to go and finals out of reach, the Demons will focus on building cohesion and developing younger players, but with Carlton on the horizon, the D's have a chance to add some more salt into the Blues' wounds this season and perhaps be the straw that breaks the camel's back and takes a coach's scalp. Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be nice.
Man,
Just before we do the stats files, is there a question? I did read the questions. There wasn't a question about the Sparrow incident.
We talk about Max, but no, just how we think. But no, there isn't a specific question surrounding that. No.
My point was because I'd be furious with North Melbourne. I'd be ropeable with North Melbourne if they contested that at the tribunal. It was just ridiculous. And I posted on Demonland that I think we need to change the way we think about the sport in some respects, and in particular acts that are sort of quote unquote reckless. Because I don't know, I'm not sure if you watched the replay. Obviously, I wasn't there and watched it live.
I've seen the incident. Yeah.
Well, Cameron Mooney was like,
Oh,
and I guess this is pretty common across the way it's being portrayed, as if it's sort of unlucky that the unlucky person in this is Jerry, and that it was a football act, and that, you do that 25 times a game, yada, 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 and reckless. But reckless is, by definition, reckless means doing something that you could have consequences that, it's not accidental. The way that we think of reckless act like that is, as if it's an accidental thing and he didn't mean it. But he showed no duty of care to Sparrow. Now, 3 weeks minimum. He should. I know that there's the Matrix and all of that, but if we're serious about concussion, they need to look at that, because the ball, sure, reckless. The ball was nowhere near where his fist was. The ball was at Sparrow's feet when Jerry struck him in the head to gain what? What was he going to do? Hit the ball, smash it straight back into Sparrow's head? We need to really seriously as a sport look at the implications of concussion and minimising you can never take concussion out of football. There's always going to be incidents where a player gets concussed. So, I'm not saying that, we should, I've argued before on the podcast that we should ban the bump, and I still maintain that. But there's always going to be incidents. There was a huge coming together of two players running for a flight of the ball, one coming one way and the other with a flight of the ball. It was lucky that wasn't a serious incident. So it's sometimes going to happen, but they need to look to how they can minimise the impact. And so, they should, in the Matrix, make that minimum 4 weeks, because, we know, Melbourne fans know, Stadley, so do West Coast fans know, Collingwood fans know, all three clubs have, and maybe I'm missing a club, have had players in the last 2 seasons retire from football, in their 20s because of concussion, and we've now got an understanding of the lifelong potential impact of concussion, and so we've got to do more to stamp it out. And as I say, accidents happen. That was a reckless act by definition. That's something he should not have done. He shouldn't have acted recklessly. It doesn't give him a free. It's not accidental. He swung a closed fist, and I don't know. Again, you'll see. I'm sure you've seen it footage. He was out cold before he hit the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a serious concussion.
And he did not move for a long time. There were people very concerned. Not an inch.
Oh, and I'm glad in one way that I wasn't there, because I would have had, as I've said before in the podcast, the worst day football experience I've ever had, the worst sporting experience I've ever had, was the Collingwood Melbourne game where Gus was knocked out, and it brought back that memories, the length of time it took him and the care with which they put him onto the cart, really brought back that incident. And it's just not good enough to, the whole culture of footy, the way people talk about it. Mooney, for instance, ex-footballers, I saw on Demonland that Corn said something about Zeri being unlucky, and that he hopes he gets off. And as I say, I'd be furious with North Melbourne if they contest it. 3 weeks every day, walk Jerry and take that. And I know there's a question about Jerry later, but it wasn't. There was a context to that as well. He was getting flogged absolutely destroyed by Max Gawn in that game, and he'd swung a fist and done something sort of indiscriminate and reckless only a few minutes before with Jefferson. It wasn't as if there was no context around it. He was getting a complete bath by Maxie. Maxie looked like, to me, a man on a mission, and that was to show Zeri, don't come at me. I'm the best ruckman in the league. And it also felt like, I've always thought Maxie's great with other ruckmen. It feels like there's something else with Jerry there. Do you know if North Melbourne are going to appeal?
So I'm just looking now. I just saw North Melbourne's tweet about it, and the tweet said, Twiston Cherry has been offered a 3-match ban for striking. The club has until tomorrow morning to decide whether to appeal the suspension. That's their tweet. I'm just seeing in the article if they go into anything or if it's just a generic AFL article, which it looks like it is. Match review officer charged Cherry with striking, grading the incident as careless conduct, severe impact and high contact. The incident resulted in Sparrow being taken from the ground. The stretcher, the club has until Tuesday morning to decide whether to appeal Cherry's suspension. The Kangaroos received fines for incidents and say, it's about some other fines that they received. But no, It's just a
Well,
generic article. But
they
they've got till tomorrow.
North Melbourne should show some leadership and cop it on, pardon the pun, cop it on the chin. Accept the 3 weeks. Careless, again, careless is, if that's the charge. We shouldn't be saying it's okay to act carelessly. It's a bit like that sort of health and safety thing. If you don't, it's not an accident if you see a slip risk and you happen to, you don't clean it up and someone falls. That's not an accident, And so, I would be ropeable with North Melbourne and lose a hell of a lot of respect for that footy club if they appeal. He's lucky. I was furious. Goody said after I saw the quote on Demonland that Goody said, I haven't seen his presser, but Goody said that he could, that he was okay. He was up in the rooms, he was talking and can remember most of the match. That's hardly a ringing endorsement of the young man's okay. And as I said before, we know the lifelong potential impact of concussion, and it's just the whole way it's spoken about, the way the media speak about it. It really just infuriates me. And Mooney, he's just typical of. I'm not really having a go at him, but it's just that culture of having ex-footballers immediately excusing Jerry's behaviour, and even going further. The implication being the unlucky person in it is Jerry. Give me a spell. So, and I think you saw a bit of the Melbourne reaction. They wouldn't let Jerry get to him to pat him on the back. And what's that saying? It's saying this is, they would if it was just a pure accident. It wasn't a pure accident. He acted recklessly or carelessly. So. Very frustrating. Apologies to listeners. You'll get multiple pings. I'm struggling with the tech a bit.
I can't hear any pings.
That's good. I can't hear. Hopefully Zach will get it out.
I think all our listeners can understand you're on holidays. You've deserted the Melbourne Football Club and taking a holiday while I'm here in the cold, braving it. Forget that I went to the US last year at the same time and made you do a show solo. Well, I didn't make it. Yeah. You do it. You volunteered to do it. But yeah.
So I do forgive him for the sound quality and the occasional drop out, and also for the stats file. I haven't been able to write it up the way I normally would, so I'll run through the stats as I would be, and there's some interesting stats. So apologies in advance for any dings, dropouts, or whatever. So but it's good to be able to watch the game, and I was really excited to watch the game, and it's good to be able to do the podcast this week.
All right, well, get into your stats files. I don't want to keep you away. I don't want to keep you away from the walk-up bar in the pool. That I'm sure the fine establishment.
I've got dinner soon. I've got to go down to some street food, so I'll get on my bike here.
It'll take as long as you yap on about. So it's all on you.
The player ratings. So really interesting player ratings. You mentioned Bailey Fritsch. Just the one comment, 7 of the top 10 players rated on the ground were Demons. The first 3 were Demons, then Jack Darling, then a D's player, Finn O'Sullivan, who looks a likely type, and rounding out the top 10 was Harry Sheasel, who also looks a pretty likely type as well. So that's interesting, is there 2... apart from Jack Darling, sort of 2 of their top 10 are those young guns. But conversely, our best top 3 players were all our really senior players, experienced players. In fact, our top 4 players, and in Kate Chandler, if you think of him as a senior player, our top 5 were, probably indicates that, that the younger players always struggle at this time of year, notwithstanding Finn O'Sullivan and Harry Sheasel being their best players. So, number 1, with a rocket, surely his best game for a long time was Bailey Fritsch, 23.3. Keeping in mind, as I've said before, 20 is considered an elite game of football. 23.3, it's a fantastic game of footy, and we will talk about Frida later, so I won't go into it, but I thought it was his best game, just on that metric alone, it was his best game. But his lack of selfishness and his team play and the enjoyment he brought, I really liked when he gets up the ground. We need his kicking skills inside 50, but it was by the eye. It was his best game, in the player ratings show that as well.
Just on the you said the unselfishness. I've in the past we've been critical that he has burnt players or whatever. But the one time I thought he didn't need to handball it, he handballed it. I mean, we got a goal out of it, the one he handballed it over to Melksham when he marked in the square. Take the shot.
Yeah.
He didn't need to handball that.
Well, no, he didn't, but I'm glad he did. And what that reinforces what I was saying about the camaraderie. Like that was, and there was a huge hug. Melksham gave me a huge hug afterwards. There was a really great energy, which, to be honest, as much as anything, was one of the most pleasing things for me for the game, because it's hard year, and we've had any number of years since I've followed the club where we've limped to the end of the season and we've been out of contention. It's it must be hard for everyone involved in. It's certainly hard for fans. It's like the last 5 weeks has been no fun whatsoever, and particularly when we've been out of the final. So for me, I thought that was great, and that act was great, because what was great about it, there were 2 things. In fact, it was he went straight. He thought about it straight away. His instinct was to look at. He saw it and he did it straight away.
Well, Melksham called for it. He called for it.
Like we've been critical, I think, with some justification of Frida for being selfish and previously, and it was everything that you want to see. And similarly, they even said on the telecast, his handball inboard that set up the Langdon goal was also a really quick bit of thinking. Now, like that was the only option to do, because he wasn't going to be able to turn. No, but they made the point on the commentary that his instinct was to do it. But that even if you'd paused a little bit to think about whether you're going to do it, then he would have got tackled over the line. So, terrific game, 23.3. Jake Melksham, who's been our highest rated player the last 2 weeks in a row, came in second, 18.4. Wow. Talk about it. And I know there's a question about Jake Melksham and similarly, so we'll go into that later. But wow, what a 3-week patch of footy. What a 4-week patch of footy, really. Just awesome. Max Gawn had his best game. He looked in the last few weeks. I heard that there was some talk that he was sick last week against Adelaide, which he definitely had a down week against Adelaide, but he was awesome in this game. And he, like I said, it felt like he looked at like a man on a mission coming into this game and he just dominated Jerry, both, and his running power is just incredible. His preparedness to, when he gives away a free or Jerry marks or whatever, is to get forward and to get to help out our defence is just, one, it shows leadership. 2, it shows incredible level of fitness to be able to do that. He had a great game, both from a leadership point of view and also just his around the ground play. And of course, he roosted one from 50. I wish they'd stopped showing that, because at 3 goals 13 he kicked, but now it's 4 goals 13, and he absolutely flushed that from 50. And by the way, Jerry, that was another bloody ridiculous dog act, and Jerry should have got 50 metres. He's pointing to the screen, which I said
that to someone. I said, you're not allowed. Like, I know they eased up on the descent and they don't really do, but I think, and I'm still think, anyone who points to the scoreboard gets a 50 metre. I still think that's a thing.
It should be automatic. Yeah. And what was he complaining about? He bumped into him. Yeah. Like, come on, you can't, there's no way that Maxi flopped. So I reckon there's a bit of niggle between them. And so that, I think all of that's the context for the Sparrow hit. Max Gawn, 17.3. Jack Viney, 4th rated player, his best game for a long time, showed great leadership in the second half in particular. And Kate Chandler rounded out our top 5. Special mention for our 6 and 7 on our listed player of our top player ratings. Harvey Langford had a great game, I thought, really influential. He was our 6th highest rated player with 13.2. And then I thought another terrific sign from a young player. Our next rated player was Van Rooyen. Fantastic performance, just a tick under. He had 13, tick under Harvey Langford. We'll talk about Harvey Langford later as well. There's a question about it, but I just love the way he played. And I tell you, he's going to be one of the interesting things after that incident with Sparrow. Again, if you haven't seen the replay, you might not have seen this, but Max went straight in at Jerry and was straight into him. And afterwards, you could see he almost had steam coming out of his ears, Maxie. It was Harvey who went across to him and calmed him down, patted him down, and patted him on the chest and sort of and I thought, wow, that's really, that's leadership.
That's captain material.
To me.
That's captain material down the track, but let's not get ahead of ourselves.
He's a very impressive
Yeah.
young man, and he's an impressive player. And once a couple more preseasons, he is going to be a serious specimen in terms of his athletic, sort of his makeup. He's already, he's a big lad already. Imagine two more AFL preseasons.
I know we're going to talk about it later, but did you notice the way that he kicks? I don't know if he's sort of guy. I don't know if he's changed it because I haven't noticed him. He's got this beautiful left foot, but it was just the way he was guiding the ball onto his foot. I don't know a way to describe it. Like
a couple of kicks. He's a really good kicker. And
he
it's like
kicked
I said a few weeks
60 meter kick that absolutely hit the target. It was weighted perfectly. And it was like 60 meters. Just boom, straight to the player's advantage. Perfect kick. He meant every meter of it.
Well, there were two. I know there's a question about it, but there were two things I made a note of exactly about Harvey Langford, and that was one of them. That was a kick to Melksham that set up Melksham goal.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we've lacked for so long. Yeah. So that ball, if you watch that clip, he kicks that, covers at least 60 metres, that kick. And as you say, not only did he meant to kick it to Melksham, he put it over the back of that contest, which to the forwards advantage, which is my pet hate. How few times we kick to our forwards advantage, and that is pure footy IQ, and that's what
you can't teach that. Season, you can't. You just have it, or you don't.
You just have it, or you don't. Well, you have to have it, and then also be able to make the decision to do it.
Yeah.
And then execute it. That's the thing. He's got the skill to execute it. And he collected that handball pretty much on the wing, ran for 10 metres or something, and then kicked that fully 60, maybe even more. It was a beautiful kick.
There's more to it. He was involved in a play just before that, deep in defence. So he would have also been out of breath a bit by the time he did that. Yeah.
And that's exactly like it. Melksham,
I
forget who he's playing.
Yeah. No.
Who was on him? Melksham. And Melksham put it over the back of the contest. And so Melksham just had to hold him underneath the contest and took that mark, and then, of course, went back and kicked it. It was a really critical goal at the time, and it's exactly what we've lacked. Run and carry, kick at 60 metres to advantage. And that's the thing that Rivers, hopefully he can improve that. But that's a sort of knock on Rivers' game. He can carry that distance, but he's not got that sort of accuracy.
He doesn't have the touch and the skill. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing about as I was saying in the beginning of the season, he's got a quality about him that he looks slow, and he's not. I don't think he's super quick across the ground, but he'll get quicker with two or three as he gets an elite sort of AFL sort of body, I guess. He'll get sort of quicker and more powerful, but he's quick of mind. He's a really quick thinker, and so a huge game from him. And he was as a sixth rated higher player. And here's one, though, for the critics of the player rating system. As I've said, it's got its strength, it's got a weakness. It's not, be all and end all. The coaches' votes were really interesting. Who did you see the coaches' votes?
I did, but now I can't. I know Track got 10.
Track got 10, and he only had 9.6 player rating. So he was like he was 8th or 9th rated player. Player rating, but the coaches both obviously gave him full votes, and he was our highest rated player. Very influential in the second half, but he was 0% efficiency for kicking in the first half, or maybe disposal efficiency. I can't remember which. But I thought it was a great game by Track, so I don't begrudge him the coaches' votes, but he got 10. Jake Melksham got 6, Max Gawn got 5, Sheasel 4, Frida only got 3, and Frida was by far and away our highest rated player on the ground for us and on the ground. So and it was rounded out by Colby McKercher, who looks like a pretty solid young player as well.
He's very good, but no one was on him. We just let him run rampant, and he was just everywhere, but no one was near him.
It was. They gave him the. That's the whole. I guess the whole challenge with the. Tagging, or do you tag? And
not to tag, but no one was. He was just by himself all the time, and good on him. He's going to be a very good player, but
you
can't just let a guy like that run around.
Down there, here's another one interesting, and for the player rating. So at the other end of the table for player rating, our lowest rated player was Caleb Windsor. Now he was sub, but he came on pretty early, it has to be said. And ironically, he was replaced Xavier Lindsay, so they both had the same amount of game time almost. It was about half time, I think. It was
It
just
was
after
just a bit
half time, was
after,
it?
sometime in the third.
Well, Xavier Lindsay had almost the same player rating as Jake Lever, and he had 3.5. Caleb only 0.1. Pretty, he couldn't get into the game, but I hope they got to just keep him in the side. And interestingly, the other one, there's quite a lot of talk on Demonland, and there's some questions about it, about Jefferson. And yeah, absolutely, that was an improved performance. I really liked his competitiveness, but his player rating was 0.2. So he was our second lowest rated player. And I guess the other one was interesting is Daniel Turner probably had his worst game for quite a while. He was our third rated 1.9 and got a bit of a lesson from Darling, I thought.
Yeah, defensively just wasn't the same as he normally is. I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but also he wasn't taking those intercept marks. He's just, it wasn't his day. You can have an off day.
No. And he was often, partly because May wasn't there, May would have been the obvious one to take Darling, and he just wasn't strong enough to go with one-on-one with Darling, and was forced into a position where he had to often. T-Mac's strength has never been one-on-one, and we'll talk about Lever in the comments. He's never been great one-on-one too, so he was left with the job of taking Darling, who, is a fantastic one-on-one mark, and probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest player in the AFL. So that's the player ratings. In terms of the key stats, some really interesting ones in terms of you can see what the D's are trying to do with the game plan and our method. And one of the things that is key to that is transition from the back half. We were much better with our chain percentage. Chains of possessions to score was 29.6. The AFL average is 20.8, so well above that, and well above them in this game, 24.5. Defensive, 50 to forward, 50 percentage, 23%. They were better than us in that, but we're above the AFL average of 22.9. Where we weren't so great, defensive 50 to score percentage was only 6.7, which is pretty terrible. They were conversely much more effective in terms of turning defensive chains into score percentage, 18.2, but sort of for context, the AFL average is 9.6. Defensive half to forward, 50 percentage on transition, which was much more positive for us, 36.8, above them 30, and AFL average 31. So that's what footy's all about at the moment, is moving it from the back half, and we are getting much, much better at moving the ball from the back half. You can really see it. That goal that we talked about that Langford set up for Melksham was a classic example of that ball movement that came from deep in our forward, defensive 50, to Langford, who run and carried and kicked 60 metres. A brilliant bit of play. Defensive half to score percentage, that would have been one of the examples of us scoring, 14%. They were almost the same, 13.8. Context, 12.9 is the AFL average. Our contest was fantastic. We're plus 20 for contested possessions. Just as a reminder for people, I think one of my frustrations is that the way that the coverage just don't, beyond sort of not providing a decent analysis and using data to support it, they also don't help footy fans understand what the data is saying and what it is. And this is the one that really gets my goat, is possessions. Is you still hear even commentators saying he had X amount of possessions and conflating possessions with disposals. They're different. Contested possessions don't mean that it's when I fight for the ball and you get the ball. It simply means when the ball is in dispute, neither team has it, who wins it, and they're made up of ground ball gets, contested marks, tackles, not tackles, frees, for instance, are a contested possession. We're plus 8 and others, so plus 20 for contested possessions. This was a great stat, I thought, plus 4 for contested marks. They're a pretty good contested marking side. We took 12 on the day. Post-clearance ground ball gets 41 to 39, and post-clearance contested possessions, which, as I've said, is considered a really important stat by some coaches, in particular Goodwin and Hardwick. We were plus 6 for that. I said last week about the Roots, they are like, their bread and butter is contests. So that's what Clarkson's trying to do with them, is to create a contest first side. So to win well on that, we didn't hammer them on those stats, but to do well with them is impressive. the total clearances were pretty much dead even. Centre clearances, we were down 6 overall, and I think there are some concerns with our setups in this the middle, like I mentioned last week. This was a really good stat. They beat us in it, but it was good in terms of comparison to last week. It was terrible last week. I forget what the number was, but first possession to clearance percentages, we were 66% of the time when we won the first possession. I made a big thing about that last week. We were woeful. They were 75.7, so that was pretty impressive, and they got some pretty good young players around the ball. But the AFL average is 74, so it was still under, but a big improvement on the previous week. We got a little bit of our intercept game going a little bit in the last couple of weeks, 49 to 44. We took 4 more intercept marks than them. This was a good number that Goody would have really loved. +5 for tackles inside 50, puts a lot of stock in that, 10 to 5. This was a really interesting one, the ruck hit-outs. I thought was a really big factor, and despite the clearance numbers being, pretty much even, where is it? He's let's like Goody. Sorry, not Goody. Maxi had, where was it? Hit outs to advantage. So we had. Sorry, just on these things. Where's Maxi's hit out to advantage? I'll get it in a sec. So Maxi Gawn had almost 30% of his hit outs to advantage. So 31 hit outs, almost 50%, I should say. Finally found it. To advantage, he's averaging 26.8% this season for hit outs to advantage. 24, he was 27.9, so he's pretty much tracking the same. In this game, he had 31 hit outs, 14 of which are to advantage, and if my math's right, that's just a tick under 50%, so pretty impressive. And Van Rooyen had a good game, I thought, too, in the ruck. He had 6 hit outs, and 2 of which were to advantage. So solid performance. Maxi Gawn had 86 rucks contests, just as an aside, and that's some serious ruck work. Just in terms of centre bounce attendances, Cozzy had the most, and it was great to see him in the middle. And geez, we need him in the middle. His speed away from when he wins the contest is so critical in footy now. I think speed is, it's more important now than it's ever been. But these were this is like going back to 21, except for Cozzy didn't do much middle work. But beyond Cozzy at 29, 88 of our centre bounce, he was at 88% of a centre bounce attendances. Then Max Gawn, track came in next with 27, Jack Viney and Clayton Oliver. That's it. Jacob Van Rooyen took 6. That's it wouldn't happen very often. We only use, what's that? So 1, 2, 3, 4 outside the ruckman. 4 players attended a centre bounce. Cozzy, Track, Jack Viney, and Clary. So, what do you think of Clary's game? Just before I go on to him,
I think he's been all right. Going by the Demonland Player of the Year, he's coming 4th or 5th. I think he's not the Clary of 2021. But he's not the Clary of, the injured Clary either, or the Clary coming back from injury. He seems to be on an upward trajectory. Whether he'll get back to the heights of his best, I don't know, but he's very serviceable and more than serviceable, I think.
Yeah, and I thought for me, his energy looked really good in this game, and he seems to be working on that first handball, giving, not just indiscriminately kicking. He did one, and I think maybe it was where he just dump kicked it, and he had Maxi free.
Yeah, not that he panics, but sometimes he just goes too quickly with that kick. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm being unfair because he was under pressure, but I thought his give, first give, was good. And I don't know, to my eye, he's looking fitter. He's looking like he's dropped a little bit of weight and getting back there. So I thought some really positive signs. And most of all, I really liked his sort of positivity and energy. And I thought he had a good game. But that was interesting in terms of the centre bounce attendances. One of the other interesting stats was, arguably won the game because of our accuracy. And so our expected score, drum roll, was 93, and our actual score was 119. And that does not happen very often in the last few years, does it? So their expected score was 77.8, and they also were above 83. So, terrific. And,
I have
Yeah,
I have a theory on the accuracy. It was quite windy, swirly. I think the wind helped us. I think some of our kicks that normally would be points were helped by the wind taking it into the goals and helping us out inadvertently. So thank you, wind.
Right.
Thank you,
Well,
Mother
I've
Nature.
got a less MFCSS spin on that. I actually think it helped for a different reason, not because we're so bad that it blew it back in the right direction. I actually think that it helped us because it made them really focus
Maybe,
on
maybe.
taking into account the wind. And if you watch all the goals and see Fritter kicking it, he seemed really happy with his first goal, I think, or his first set shot. And I think it was because he read the wind properly. And also similarly with
Melksham.
Melksham,
I think
he
Melksham knows
really.
how to work the wind. I think he knows where to aim for to utilize the wind.
So I think that
Yeah.
I think that's my take. So
Yeah.
not that it was so
No,
our kicking
mine
so
was a
bad that
joke, but, but
you were
half a joke.
joking,
Half a joke.
joking, not joking. But
Yeah.
it certainly was a massive. There's no question it was a massive factor in the win, obviously, and I would love that every week. And I think we kicked 7 straight in the last quarter before we ended up kicking a couple of points, and that was huge. It was 46. What was the overall 51? Pretty much split. Territory was 50-50 split. Scoring sources were they centre bounces where they got us. They were plus 16 roos. They kicked 5 straight out of centre bounces, and again, I think there's some structural things there. We had 4 scoring shots. So I only had 1 more scoring shot. We scored 2, but they were plus 6. Where we got them is around the ground, and that was Maxi going to work. So, if you're going to knock them for centre bounces, you've got to credit for this. We're plus 20, 6-5, 41 to 3-3, 21 from around the ground. Arguably, where we won the game is turnover. That was certainly helped by some of their shocking kicking, the Roos shocking kicking, no doubt about that. And particularly in the last quarter, they did some howlers in terms of turnover. But you've got to take advantage of them when you get the opportunity, and we certainly did that. 10-4, 64. They could only manage 3-6, 24. So we got plus 40, smashed them for that. So that was huge. So for turnover, 64, season average 44. They only scored 24 on turnover, as I mentioned, against our season average of giving up 48 points. So 50% less than our season average. So regardless of their poor kicking, it's still, as I said, you've still got to take advantage of it, and we did that. I think one of the things that really I keep looking at that is a positive, and when I talk about our game plan that Goody's trying to implement, those long handballs, moving it from the back half, is this stat, points from defensive half. We scored 43 points for our defensive half against a season average of 27.5. They could only manage 28 from their back half. We've been conceding on average 38.3 from our back half. So 43 from our defensive half. I talked about transition stats before. Well up on our season average. So that was super impressive. The pressure was the big one. That's really where we won the game. And, this is a really, I've made the point a number of times and this contradicts my point, but that somewhat, that the pressure rating is, I think, by far the best stat in terms of correlation between winning the pressure rating and winning a game of football. I say it contradicts because our overall match pressure rating was 174 and against was 180. So they actually won the pressure rating overall by 6, but sort of reinforcing my point is that it mirrors the score. So it was 156. Our worst quarter was our first quarter, 156 to 163. We did a bit better in the second quarter. Keeping in mind 180 is the sort of AFL average 200s elite. 176 in the second quarter. They were 192, so they were minus 16. We were minus 23 in the third quarter, and I was thought that was poor. Just just from what I was watching. So 162 to 185, negative 23. We're lucky, to be honest, that they didn't take advantage. And in that third quarter, you could see it on the coverage they had it. We were after 10 minutes we were 200. Then it dropped off a cliff in the last 2/3 of that quarter, and we were dead lucky that the Roos didn't. They missed some very gettable shots in that time, and we were dead lucky they didn't take advantage of that that gap in the pressure rating. But the big one, and sort of to make my point around the importance of pressure rating, was our last last quarter was also by far and away our highest pressure rated quarter. 204 we averaged across the last quarter. Again, 200 being elite to their 176, so it's not like there's dropped off a cliff. So they only averaged 180 for the game, or the 180 for the game, which is AFL average 176 in that last quarter. So we were plus 28 for pressure points in the last quarter. And the thing one that won us the game. Two, what I loved about it is that they came out at 3/4 time and so we're going to win this game of footy, and they went about the job. And the way to do it is to put the sort of pressure on that they did. And just the top 5 pressure ratings, top 6 actually looking down, top 7, 8, 9, all senior players. Jack Viney was our highest rated pressure player, season average of 43.
9 tackles for the day.
Just awesome, just awesome, great leadership. It felt like these senior players said, "We're going to win this game for Goody. Come with us, boys. We're going to win this." And I love that. Regardless of what you think of Goody as a coach, regardless of where what you think, where you think we should go with our coaching. I don't think there's any question that he'll be reappointed for next season. In any case, so he'll get another crack at it. But the senior players love him, and we saw this in this game. So Jack Viney was our highest rated pressure rating, well above his season average. Clayton Oliver second. He's been up there almost every round so far. Cade Chandler had his best game for some time, 42 pressure rating points against his season average of 34. Salo had his best game in some time, I thought, just from his energy and his attack on the footy, and he had 15 pressure acts, just on pressure acts. So he had 15 pressure acts. Claz had 16 pressure acts. Cade Chandler had 15 pressure acts. Jack Viney had 31 pressure acts. Yeah. That's just insane. Set almost twice the second next number of pressure acts. That was just a phenomenal performance from a leader of the footy club. And Track, who he has a season average, he was 36. So it's a bit under, but he had 15 pressure acts and he was 6. Then Max Gawn, Sparrow, Langdon, and you have to go all the way down to, of all players, interestingly, who had our lowest pressure rating was, you have to go all the way down for Caleb Windsor, who had 26 pressure points, 9 pressure acts for a young player to be in that list. So all in all, I think a really terrific game to watch. But it was as they all are, a game of two halves. But that last quarter was fantastic, and it was all really built off the pressure. I really, really like the game plan that Goody's trying to build. I think the points from defensive half we're seeing it grow every week. Of course, we need more elite kicks, but we can see just in that bit of play that we were talking about before of Langford. There's another one that I was going to mention, and I'll mention now. He also set up brilliantly, and it just goes to his footy IQ. Set up Chandler's goal with a handball that was just, not only was it a smart handball under pressure, but it was a high footy IQ handball, because he handballed it into space for Chandler to run onto. Yeah. And I don't know if you recall that goal, but that allowed Chandler to have enough time to square up and kick it on his left. If that handball had gone a little bit quicker and not of such a long handball, he would have been forced to kick on his right foot. And so it was just a really brilliant bit of play by the young man. And I'm just trying to look at what his scoring involvements were. Well, I'll get it up. But he seemed to be involved in a lot of scoring chains. Langford, I'll just have a look now if I can find it on. Where is he? And as I said, the other thing that really stuck out for me was his leadership in going to Max, and it also stuck out how big a boy he is. He didn't look like he was, so he had 9 score involvements. By context, our forward, Cade Chandler, who I thought had a good game, he had 5. I'm just looking here at the score involvement chart. So the top was Track had 12, Jai Simpkin 10, but our second highest score involvement was behind Track, who had 12, as I said, and that's probably where his coaches' votes came in, was Harvey. And that really, really bodes well for the future. Before I go off while I think of it, just on Caleb Windsor, I found it fascinating, Goody saying that he had gone back to the VFL to become a mid, essentially, and get him in the middle. And I think that, ironically, he didn't spend any time in that game. So I don't know what that was about, but I could see that working. I don't know that it's worked so great off the halfback flank. So but I think that points to just the importance of leg speed in your midfield now, and something we've struggled in, and maybe that explains why Cozzy went to more centre bounce attendances than anyone else in our team, and I think maybe anyone else on the ground. So good game.
Well, you might need to cancel your dinner plans and order some Uber Eats if they have that there, because we're almost.
No, the equivalent here is Grab. So
Grab,
you can order your remorque, which is a motorbike, like a 4-seater little trolley pulled by a motorbike or a tuk-tuk, and food. But all good. It's only 5:00 here in San Maria, Bandy. Got a couple of hours before dinner.
All right, let's get on to our listener questions. Dominion writes, can anyone shed some light on why Tom McDonald has been out of the side? I thought he was having a very solid season before being dropped all the way back in round 11, and he hasn't been able to break back into the team until this week. He wasn't even recalled when Lever missed a game, which I found surprising. Once again, I thought he played well. He defended strongly, used the ball efficiently, and made some smart decisions. I know he's getting on in age, and this might be his final season, or maybe one more. But based on form, he's been one of our most consistent defenders this year. I'm struggling to understand why he seems out of favour. I get that it's tough to fit 4 key defenders into 3 spots, but on performance alone, I'd have him in our top 3. What do others think? And Travi14 responds to that, says, I think you'll find T-Mac got an extra year contract as a backup and was told he won't be in unless there are injuries. He went out when we were full strength and only came in for injuries. We're looking to the future now, and he isn't part of that, so I don't mind it. So, Big Man, I know you've been a big advocate of Tom McDonald. You were one of the strongest voices pushing for him to be in our starting 22 from the beginning. We discussed this on the podcast before, during our preseason events that we attended. You were baffled to, well, let's just say we were reliably informed that T-Mac was likely to be the odd man out in our key defensive setup. And as we know, 4 doesn't go into 3. Fortunately for him, well, not for the team, but there were early injuries to both May and then Lever, and that opened the door. And to his credit, T-Mac grabbed that opportunity early on with both hands, and you can argue he was our most reliable defender across the first 10 rounds, and yet come round 11, where he was unceremoniously dumped to make way for Jake Lever. And now fast forward 7 weeks later, May's out with illness, T-Mac returns, and once again, he's arguably our best defender on the ground. And I understand the club's position that we're playing and planning for the future. But T-Mac is still on our list. He's shown that when he does play, he delivers. So the question is, B-Man, if he's performing, why not play him? But then again, who makes way for him, if that's the case?
So get to the question about why he was dropped. It's a head scratcher for me in the sense that I'd have him in all day, every day. And one of the reasons is he's an excellent field kick. Makes good decisions and hits targets. And, as I've banged on about ever since I've been on the podcast, is it's our biggest weakness. And so it baffles me. You take out one of our best kicks. But the person who relied, that function that you were referring to, I was amazed that there was talk that he wouldn't be in, and the implication was, and I think to answer the question why he came out is how critical leg speed is across the ground, but from the halfback flank, and that a more mobile, sort of quicker team is critical from the defensive unit. That's my feeling, is that the sense is that he's not quick enough. He was certainly, like at the time, I reckon if we go to the Bluey this year, he'll be up in the top 5 when the point he was dropped on the. So it certainly wasn't form. I
100% wasn't form.
No,
100%.
And he's come straight back in like he hasn't missed a beat. He's just on his player ratings, 10.8. I thought he was terrific. He's never been great one-on-one, but did do okay one-on-one in a couple of contests. Makes really smart decisions. I think I love his leadership. He isn't super quick. I feel like it was Howes or him. And that they wanted to prioritise Howes. Howes is pretty quick, and that's my feeling about why he was dropped. Would you play him now? Like, that's a really good point about, we're playing for the future. Goody mate, I haven't heard it, but they referenced it on the coverage that Goody had talked about, the importance of playing now for next future. Goody, remember last year, said that he missed a trick by not doing that last year, so we can expect him to do that this year. But if it were me, I'd be dropping Lever and I'd bring Housey and drop Lever. Lever was terrible, and if it's about leg speed, Lever's not quick, and Lever looks completely and utterly like snail pace at the moment.
Yeah, so Stephen May's most likely back this week from illness.
I did it really interesting because there's a question about that coming up. Petty comes back too, but I'd be dropping Lever and keeping T-Mac in. Because if the argument is about, well, it's for the future, well, Lever's not really part of the long-term future either. He'll be playing next year, of course.
Well, it's about next year and the year after. So
yeah. So there was a comment, I'm not sure, I can't remember if I read it here in the questions for tonight or it was just on Demonland. I would be thinking about playing Petty back. And so because he is, he's going to be in the frame for replacing May or Lever. I'd be really, if it were me and I'm making a choice this week, I'd be dropping Lever whether he looks still injured. So I'd be dropping him on that. And if he isn't still injured, I'd still pick Tommy Mack in front of Lever.
Well, we'll get into it in the changes later because it will be interesting because I'd like to give Jefferson and JVR, and we're talking about them shortly, I'd like them to stay, give them some time to formula and see whether they can work something out. So you can't play Petty 3 tools and then what do you do in defence? So it's an interesting thing with May and Petty both most likely available this week and Tom McDonald and the 2 forwards that we've got. It'll be interesting. So we'll save that a bit for later. Have a think about it. Let's go on.
And I just realised, Andy, maybe it's the lag in the time difference zone. I just realised you gave me a drive-by about how long the stats files went. So I'll be sharp from now on. I'll sharpen it up.
It wasn't a drive-by. It was a firing squad. I think it was quite clear on what I was talking about.
Rightio.
Bigfoot says Jake Melksham is having an incredible purple patch. He's kicked 14 goals, 8 in the past 3 weeks. I read that the last time a Demon kicked 4 goals or more in 3 consecutive games was David Neitz in 2006. He's our most informed, consistent forward at the moment. Give Jake another season. Spirit of Norm Smith says Melksham was incredible again. So smart. Old age. What's that? He's the only player still that I have confidence in when kicking for goal. Travie14 says, I actually think we should do the same thing with Melksham as I mentioned with T-Mac in regards to not playing him as part of our future planning. But with his form and our forward line woes, I can't see it happening. So, Bimman, before we discuss Jake Melksham and his purple patch and whether we should, in fact, be playing him despite his renaissance in order to future-proof our forward line. Bigfoot was indeed correct. According to Sir Swamp Thing on Twitter or X, Jake Melksham is the first Demon since David Neitz in 2006, that's 19 years ago, to kick 4 goals plus in 3 consecutive weeks. And last week, Sir Swamp noticed that since David Neitz in 2006, only 7 D's players have kicked 4 plus goals in 2 consecutive games, and that's only in 7 just happened once. Liam Jarrah in 2010, 2 consecutive weeks of kicking 4 plus goals. Mitch Clark in 2012, T-Mac and Jesse Hogan in 2018, and Track and Benny Brown in 2023. And now we've got Jake Melksham. So Jake, he's been sensational. I agree. He's been one of the only players I have almost full confidence in when lining up for goal with any degree of difficulty, whether he's in front on a 45, on the boundary, doing one of those snaps. He's one of the only current D's players that I actually have confidence in, no matter where he is. Having said that, should we be playing him? The whole T-Mac conundrum. Should we be future-proofing our forward line and not playing Melksham? And/or should we give him an extra year?
It's interesting. I could see Travie 14's argument about, wanting to play for the future, and so, Petty comes in. But the weighing against that is in the last 6 weeks, we still want to win.
Yeah.
And you're also still, there's no point practicing systems if you're not going to be, taking advantage of the ball movement. And, it doesn't do anyone any good, not being able to score when you're transitioning.
Yeah.
I think he is part of our future. Like, I know he's not signed yet on, but I would be shocked if he doesn't play on. This is the best form of his career.
Yeah.
Like, how many times would have he, let alone what the stat you said before, in terms of four or more goals 3 weeks in a row, player ratings has been through the roof. Like, I can't record a time in Melbourne, his career at Melbourne. And how many games I was asking someone the other day, Bombers fan, how many games has he played at Melbourne now?
I'll have a look. He played like his 100th game for Melbourne. I'm pretty sure that was something I recall.
Two kids, so he's got
okay,
kids. So
so
hopefully
he played. He has played the games. He's played 242, and he's played more at Melbourne. I need to get a. You keep talking. I'll give you.
Good for father son and good for father daughter. He looked incredibly fit. I think there's a few factors in, so I would be keeping him in. I can see the argument why you might want to preference the younger players. I would also be keeping Jefferson in. I think that, and JVR, I know like they all don't go into, you've got to drop some players. But I think his leadership is really important. He's got future coach written all over him if he wants to go on. I really hope he signs on. I think he's a really important player at the Melbourne Footy Club for a range of reasons, not least of which what he's bringing on the field. I saw that stat on Demonland and about that's a bit. It's not great, is it? That it's back to 2006 since we've had a player who's kicked 4 or more goals in 3 weeks in
a row, and even only having 7 that have done the 2 weeks in a row in all that time as well.
Yeah, that's good Lord. That's a lot of games where we just haven't had a dominant forward. So,
yeah.
I really like his leadership. I really hope he goes on. If he goes on, then,
I'm happy to. Would you be happy to give him another year?
Oh, totally. I'd lock it in right now. And to be honest, I just can't see him retiring. Like, he's just, he looks fitter than he ever has. This is as well as he's played. My point before, I think this is as well as he's played in any block of 5-6 weeks in his whole time at Melbourne. I'd be keeping him in the side for sure. And as you said, how great is it to have a player that you're confident is going to go back and kick it? And the first one he kicked from that Harvey Langford, I'm pretty sure that was his first goal from his Harvey Langford kick. That was no easy kick. That was 45 metres he probably kicked it from with the wind, as you were saying. Was it windy at the ground?
Yeah, I think it was. And I think there was a lot of movement of the ball when they were kicking the goal.
From memory, that was the punt road end, and the G, that's always the trickiest end for whatever reason. It must be the Ponsford, and it's the Olympic, is it? Does a better job of protecting the city end at the G.
So where I was sitting, you couldn't really feel the wind. Every now and again, you'd get a gust or something, but you could see on the ground level there was quite a wind. I could tell from the fabric of the umpires, their jumpers sometimes were like, it was flapping in the wind. I could tell. I think it was quite strong on ground level.
And I mean, with your hair situation, you probably wouldn't have felt it much sort of rippling.
I got hair.
All right, the drive-by back done now.
Jeez. Jeez, to take a pot shot of my personal appearance, why don't you? 128 games for Melbourne and 114 for Essendon.
Great. And as I said, I heard him interviewed after the ground, and he speaks well. He's smart. Clearly, his teammates really, really respect him. Great energy. He's quick to sort of give advice and support for the younger players. I would sign him on next year in a heartbeat. And he's the sort of player, like, this doesn't happen very often, but he's the sort of player I'd love for the club to consider him like a coaching role, transitioning from playing into a coaching role somehow. If he's interested and that's what he wants to end up doing, I could, there's very few players I think this of. Ironically, Nathan Jones being one of them, to be perfectly honest. But the who think that they could really be a senior coach. You can see it. So a fantastic block of games from Melk, and he was terrific in this game. What did he kick? He kicked 5, didn't he?
Yeah, 5. So I think he's kicked 5, 4, and 5 or something. Yeah, pretty amazing.
Terrific.
All right, let's talk about the forward line. Phil C. writes, more a statement than a question, but Jeffo presented well leading up and lots of second efforts. Once he bulks up and gains confidence, he still might prove a good player. Rue still continues to run under the ball. If he could just adjust it somehow, it would make a huge difference. Our good mate from Brussels, Terence, who's currently in Melbourne, and more on that shortly, says it was terrific to see Matt Jefferson play well, and although JVR kicked one out on the full, he played a good game. And Buck Nickett says Jeffo started to show some things, and Frittata picked up his game. Spirit of Norm Smith says effort from JVR and Jeffo was okay. That's the competitive standard. They are still needing lots of development, but we need to give them a go. Jeffo's kicking let him down again, and that needs work. And Lazy says, I love Bailey Fritch's game. The effort to help teammates and find space was evident, yet with 0 tackles and 4 pressure acts, are there still concerns? Bailey looks excellent when he has the space. He was allowed by the North defence, but the games I worry about are the ones where he doesn't have that space and needs to find other ways to work his way into the game / help us lock the ball inside 50 and get some repeat chances of goals. To look at it another way, is this not going to be much of an issue once we have our transition game plan going and we're getting into 50 quicker to players like Fritsch on a lead? Your thoughts? So, B-Man, before I get your thoughts on the forward line, particularly the performances of Jefferson and JVR, I just want to touch on something that Lazy raised about Bailey Fritsch and the lack of pressure. And I totally understand the desire for to want every player to apply pressure. No one wants to see half-assed or half-hearted chases or lack of a second or even a first effort. But not every player is going to be a Jack Viney type who lays 9 tackles a game. And for me, Fritter, he's presenting kick. If he's kicking a couple of goals and setting up a few others, I'll take that performance every week. And sure, if he's not hitting the scoreboard and registering 0 tackles or showing little pressure, then I'd start to have concerns if that's going to be the week in, week out. And we have seen a bit of that this year. But based on his game this week, I had no issues at all if he's not laying 0 tackles. If he's kicking a couple of goals and giving off a couple like he did, that's fine with me. But, I'm not concerned with his game this week and 0 tackles. So, Ben, what are your thoughts on Fritsch and then a couple of the other guys in the forward line, if you want to touch on?
Well, I 100% agree. I mean, I'm a bit surprised at those numbers. I saw that because I thought his want and intensity looked good actually, and so that's interesting that he only had the 4 pressure acts. But I agree. I agree as a general thing in the premise that not every player has to be a Jack Viney contest beast, and you need there's players will bring different things to the table. As I noted before, I was. So I put my hand up last week. I was really, really, critical of Fritter, and I, lost a lot of, that I thought his performance last week was poor. He was great this week. I mean, as I said, 23.3 player rating. That's a serious game of footy. 20 is considered an elite game of AFL. 23.3. I don't know what in this round. There wouldn't have been many players who would have scored more player rating points than Fritter this weekend. As he said, that based on his goals, setting up goals, his involvement in the game, I loved his energy. Like, he really seemed to be connected. Like, there's been games where I've thought, I've wondered whether he's on the outs with players or something. I don't know, that just the energy's been a bit off sometimes, but that just seemed great this week. So if I'm going to give him a whack last week, give him full credit this week. I think it's a reasonable point, that idea that it was North Melbourne maybe gave him more space than other teams would, but North Melbourne are a contest side, and it's funny how people's perception change. A lot of people thought this was a danger game. We won by 6 goals in the end. We easily covered the line, and so a lot of they're their game is built around contest and pressure, and so it's not as if they would have, that it wasn't as if it was a low pressure game and Bailey benefited from it. It was a relatively high pressure game. What did I say? They were 180 and we won 176. So it wasn't as if he was allowed to run around like McKercher was for us, for instance. So terrific effort on Jeffo. It's a bit of the sort of risk of setting the expectations so low. I was actually really, to be honest, very surprised when I saw the player ratings, how low his player rating was. But I thought I was super critical of him last week. His contest and effort and intensity was not AFL standard last week, and it was this week. And it was terrific. He was involved in a lot more contests. I thought he played an interesting game. He was up and down the ground quite a bit. And so he did quite a lot of running. If he can build his tank, we're going to need that sort of player. I thought his goal was great that he went back and kicked that goal around the corner. It was a really good mark. He judged that well. And I really hope that they stick. You gain nothing from dropping him, and so having a yo-yo effect. Just on, well, I think of it just on Petty. So that's now 3 weeks he's missed with concussion, or is it 2?
No, it's 2. Now it's
2. It's a bit of a concern again. Like again, it's going looping all the way back to the Sparrow conversation.
When I looked at it said that it was an illness on top of the concussion. Like I think he's had an illness, so he might have one that Stephen May had. But
we've had 2 players this season. Yeah. Viney missed 4 weeks with concussion.
A lot of weeks.
It's close to 5. 2 weeks with concussion. Just as underline what I was saying about the danger and the seriousness of concussion. And as I said, I'll be furious if North Melbourne appeal that. I will lose all respect for that footy club if they go that path. But Jefferson was much better. It was JVR's best game. He has got this habit of running under the ball a bit, and if he can get that out of the game, his game, and prove that, he's always had a little bit, but it seems to be more sort of evident this year, or it's happening more often this year. But as I said before, he's our 6th or 7th highest rated player, or maybe 8th. I thought he's.
Yeah, go. I just had the Bailey Fritsch. You asked about the player ratings for this week. He was 7th in the AFL. Bontempelli, Riley Tilthorpe, Dacos, Josh Variety, Aaron Cadman, Josh Dunkley, Jordan Dawson. So he's in good company.
He's in good company. Yeah. So, because speaking of Cadman, he looked pretty good, didn't he? Number 1 draft pick. So, and it's just on Cadman, he's a year behind JVR. He was drafted the year before, wasn't he? The year after. But it just shows that Cadman did nothing in his first season, pretty much in his second season. So the forwards take a while. Great to see Roo. Pity he hacked the kick, but great to see him take a screamer. I thought his rucking was terrific. Great game from him. And Jeffo, his effort and intensity was much better, I thought, than last week. And let's stick with him for the rest of the season and get a good look at him. There's nothing to be lost by doing so, and there's nothing to be gained by sending him back to the VFL, I don't reckon.
Yeah, I'd hate to see him go back to the VFL. I agree. I think he played a lot better. He did all the right things, getting well. The one thing he didn't do is what he's there to do, is to kick goals once he takes those marks. So that'll come. It was a bit disappointing. Maybe he couldn't judge the wind, but having said that, he's played at Casey quite a lot of games. He should know how to navigate the wind.
Yeah.
But anyway,
that's true.
He was getting the ball and he got in the position to kick a couple of goals. And once he starts kicking a couple of goals, then all right.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll
look, he's a player. The Cadman's got stronger and his game has gone up a level. Again, his peak isn't going to be till he's 24 or so, 25. He's I think, going to be a similar player in sort of style to Horvitz. Once he's strong, gets stronger, and he won't be his full sort of strength till he's 24, 25. He's going to be a different player. He'll be have the strength of a Darling and the sort of athleticism of.
Are you talking about Roo or Jefferson?
Roo. No, not Jefferson. Roo. Sorry, who? No, I was talking about.
I was talking about Jefferson before.
Oh, sorry. What did you say about
Jefferson? I think he did all the right things. He was getting the ball and.
Yes.
Yeah,
sorry.
He just wasn't. He just didn't kick goals when he could have. No. But I'm saying he could have kicked 2 or 3 goals, and so once he. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
I think we need to play the two of them for the rest of the year, regardless
Yeah.
of their performances. Just keep playing these two guys,
Yeah.
playing
And I
them
initially I
together.
thought Jefferson would play out of the goal square, but I think I like him up the ground and Rue in the goal square, actually.
Yeah. All right, let's move on so you don't miss your dinner. And I don't miss my bedtime. Spirit.
They'll be there. The food vans will be there till well after midnight. So don't know.
I'm not staying here till 2 a.m. What's it, 3 hours difference? That's 3 a.m. Spirit of Norm Smith says, goal kicking, 18 goals, 11. Wow, that's a difference. Goal kicking accuracy wins games. And Smurf says, it's remarkable how much of a difference accurate goal kicking can make to your chances of winning. We kicked straight this week and surprise, surprise, we won. Beyond the scoreboard, missing gettable shots, which we still did for a brief patch, is so deflating. It undoes all the hard work that leads up to those opportunities and can completely shift the momentum of a game. This has happened to us multiple times this season. In games where we've had a positive goal kicking to point differential, we have won 5 and lost 1. In games where we've had a negative differential, we are 1 and 9. So that's 5 and 1 when we've been positive with goals versus points, to 1 and 9 being on the negative. And we lost the game against Collingwood by 1 point, where we had an even number of goals and behinds. Any one of those points converted to a goal would have won us the game against the Magpies. So, big man, what a difference accuracy in front of goal makes to a game. We've already sort of discussed it, but let's. Does make a difference.
It's a given, isn't it? So, take them all as comments, and I do wonder whether the psychology is sort of going back to us saying they look like they're enjoying themselves, they look like they're relaxed, and maybe that's part of our issue, is that we've been in too much in our head, and that when there's less pressure, that we're able to convert more. But it certainly was the difference kicking 7 straight before we missed in that last quarter. Good kicking is good football.
And perhaps the win did help us a little bit. Don't forget that conspiracy.
Or potentially negative reasons.
3183D says, the thing that struck me at the game was how much better we look with Cozzy playing solely in the middle, which we've spoken to. Not only for his speed out of the contest, but his field kicking is laser sharp, which sticks out a mile in this team. Buck Neckett says it was more of a VFL hit out than an AFL game. At least it wasn't an under-14s fixture like the Tigers and the Bombers. Whilst it was great to see many of those who have struggled before look good, I wonder if this will be a false dawn, or will this give them confidence to take the next steps? We were more polished than the second-level midfield of the Roos, but what can we really take away from that? Spirit of Norm Smith says, Max is the premier All-Australian ruckman for 2025. Saw off the challenger, loved his goal from the special spot outside 50 and loved him flying the flag against the sniper Sherry. Jack Viney, 9 tackles again, maximum effort, had a good first half. He actually hit 2 or 3 targets today. Track getting back to his career best, good at the contest. He can get back to his beast mode in my view, but his delivery inside 50 is still horrible, and his handballs put others under pressure, and missed tackles are costly. We lost the centre clearances 11-17, the Roos minus Wardlow and LDU, so had a second strength midfield in Phillips, Powell, Simpkin, and still beat us in clearances. So, B-Man, thoughts on the midfield battle yesterday, and do you take anything from the fact that they were missing a couple of their stars in the middle? Does that take any gloss off the win?
No, it doesn't really take a gloss off the win. It does. Look, I think we've had you wonder how much is structural and set up, and that's 2 weeks in a row we've had. I forget how many clearances Track had. I think he had quite a lot this week. He had 0 last week, I think. I don't know how many times that's happened in his whole career. And so it didn't look as bad as last week in terms of the centre clearance, but still a bit of work to do there. Absolutely, Cozzy's critical. So looking forward to next year, I think a player like Mentha becomes really important, because Mentha, if he is playing regular senior footy, that means that, Cozzy can basically be a full-time mid, and I think we need him. We need his leg speed. I really like the idea of Caleb Windsor going in there, so it was somewhat surprising that they didn't, but I think, we wanted to win the game, obviously. But, next year, I think you'll see Harvey Langford taking 30%, 40% of centre bounces. I think there's every chance at some point Lindsay might run through there, and we'll see that hopefully after another good pre-season, Track and Clary will both get back near their best. That was a great game from Track. It was interesting. You got 10 coaches' votes though, because I totally agree. His kicking inside 50 in that first half was just appalling. And also that you mentioned it, funnily enough, last week about his completely gone off the ball with those round the body kicks in front of goal. There was another one this week.
He cannot snap a goal. I watched him. Zero pressure in the pre-game warm-up to have a couple of snaps a goal, and none of them went close. I don't know what it is.
Well, it's a new thing because that used to be his bread and butter. Like that was the one that I was most likely shot where he goes around the body, and the one that he missed. I'm not playing footy to the AFL level, obviously, but he it seemed to be like harder to miss than kick that one because he was right in front of the goal and he kicked the point. So, but yeah, his kicking is a worry. But just on Track, I just loved his enthusiasm in that last quarter in the second half, and I suspect that's where the 10 coaches vote came because it wasn't just what he did with his disposals and his contest; it was also just his evident desire to win that game of footy and to be involved and to be someone driving it. But then he kicked that beautiful goal where he's just shrugged off the player. And when he's like that, like as the beast mode, Spirit of North Smith spot on, like when he's like that, he must be the hardest player in the AFL to tackle. And his joy in that last quarter was, I really enjoyed. So I heard him interviewed, maybe it was after the game, I can't recall, but he sort of talked about it been a long season for him and that he thought he'd get better. He was just happy back being playing. I do wonder whether, that injury was such a traumatic injury that, not as serious, nowhere near as serious, but I've talked about this before. Langdon took a full season to get over his broken ribs, I reckon. I think that there's maybe much ado made about nothing about, and sort of Track could easily go up back to his career best next year, as could Clary. So if they do, we're talking all Australian midfielders back at their best. So there's no. I don't think it's a given that both of those players are on a sort of plateau period, and that I think they've got more to go up a level. 100% though, Cozzy's critical to that makeup. His leg speed is an important factor, as I said. His ability to get out the front of contests is important, but just as important is his ability to hit to hit targets when he's running at speed. And I wonder whether that's part of the thinking about getting Windsor into the centre to give us some leg speed out of there, because I don't think Rivers is. I think he's better back in the back half. So, but it was, as I said in the stats file, it was really curious how few players attended a centre bounce attendance. But that can sometimes be a little bit overplayed, too much emphasis on the centre bounces, because we dominated stoppages around the ground, as I mentioned before, both numbers and in scoreboard, and Harvey Langford was a big part of that. So it's not all about the centre square, but it becomes really evident when you get really punished out of the centre.
Speaking of Harvey Langford, Mandalorian says, I've been super impressed with Harvey Langford all year, and I thought that his foot skills yesterday were just superb. More drafting of kids with elite foot skills, please. And Spirit of Norm Smith says, Harvey Langford, love the kid. His composure is beyond his years battles in the contest. He will eventually be an inside mid-star once he gets a few pre-seasons under his belt. So, big man, we've discussed him quite a bit, so we don't need to bang on about it, but we have unearthed an absolute gem here. He's big booming kicks hitting targets 60 metres away, like we discussed before. It's just a thing to behold. And they absolutely hit the nail on the head in drafting him. And I think he's going to win that rising star by a mile.
Well, I sort of hope not, because I'll regret not betting on him in the season. But I hope he does for his sake. I don't actually think
he'll be up there. He'll be in the top three.
He'll be way up there. He'll be in the top three. And as I said before, I really like his leadership. He's got captain written all over him, as you implied. Just as a curiosity, he's become a player that we always seem to call his full name. It's always Harvey Langford. Well, what's that about? Never Langford, never Harvey.
I think I'd do that at the game as well. Harvey Langford. Yeah. Well, I feel funny calling him Langford. I don't know if it's because of when growing up with Chris Langford at Hawthorn.
Yeah, we don't want any connection to that at all. Get that out of your mouth, Andy. And also, we've got a Langers, and the
And Lingers,
Bison's not
yeah.
sticking. So, and Harvey by itself is,
Yeah, Harvey, it's a bit too. Max is one thing because he's the captain. He's like a brother, but
yeah. So HL, Harvey Langford it is until we can come up with a better nom de plume.
Radish D writes, a good afternoon at the footy. The attack continues to improve, starting to hit goals, hit up teammates, things starting to click. It's nice to see this come together. Strangely, the concern for me at the moment is the defence. We're still giving up lots of goals per inside 50 and giving up lots of points on turnover. What does the panel think needs to change to improve? Do we bring in a proper mid-sized defender? Does AMW, that's Andy Menez Wakefield, fill that gap? Howes, Rivers? Spirit of Norm Smith says, Lever looked slow again and caught twice when he was so slow to get rid of the footy. Not sure he stays in when May returns. McVie lost most of his contest and struggled against Curtis until Curtis got injured. Again, his injury set him back, and he's still, McVie's injury set him back, and he's still a key player going forward. Goodwin allowed McKercher to run loose as a quarterback across half back. 20 possessions to half time. Had a lot of kick, run, and receive without pressure. Others like Nasaya, Wanganeen, Millera, and side bottom, etc., would destroy us if allowed such freedom. DL Fart has other plans for Howes. He says, I thought Howes had an excellent game for Casey, and to me, he looks a class above the VFL. I'd like to see him return to the seniors, but played on the wing as a replacement for Lindsay/Winster, who are looking like they've run out of energy in their young legs. I'd value your thoughts. B-Man, do you have any concerns about our once vaunted and feared defence?
I mentioned a few weeks, or maybe it was last week or a couple of weeks ago. I think the challenge for the defence is really about the system and transitioning from it's almost where it's in some ways most evident, the change of a game plan to a transition ball movement model away from the straight line footy that involved getting it forward, trapping it forward, and setting up behind the ball and zoning in that way. That's made it challenging for us. And going back to the conversation about T-Mac, I think that was the reason why he was out of the side, because we've got to change our defensive system to be able to. When you get hurt on turnover, which has been a big weakness of ours all season, is you need to have players with defensive wheels to get back, and which is what Collingwood is so brilliant at. If you watch them, they're so brilliant at when they turn the ball over, they press up really high, is getting back on defence, and that requires players with wheels. I think that explains why Windsor was tried at halfback flank, because he's probably our quickest player. It's exacerbated with Lever. He looks super slow. He's clearly, he's got the ankle and feet injury, so that exacerbated. May's not quick. So I McVie, it's interesting. Spirit of Norm Smith notes McVie. We really need him up the ground, and he hit that kick to, I think it was to maybe that was another one to Melksham, where he kicked into space and Melksham ran onto it, wasn't it? Or maybe that was Bowie. But he kicked a nice kick inside 50 that set up a goal, and that's where I want him. I want him delivering him from sort of, being a more aggressive player. And in order for him to do that, he's got to move off those, playing the lockdown player on the gun, small forward or medium forward of opponents, in which case AMW, I think, is a critical player, because he's the player that they had tagged to play that lockdown Quainer role. So I think that they're two important pieces of the puzzle. Howes is an interesting one. I think, he came in essentially for T-Mac, and I think the reason being is because he is quite quick. He's someone I could see playing a wing. If he plays wing, for instance, that allows them to play Harvey Langford as a mid potentially. But I think that it's a challenge defensively. It comes up, but we're okay at defending transition. It's just that we turn the ball over too much and always going to struggle to defend on turnover. I just wonder whether it's sort of that's with this change in method, that one of the areas that's most difficult to get right is getting the defensive system right, and you probably look towards Collingwood to see how they are going about it. And they've become, I think I'm right in saying they're the number one defensive team in the AFL at the moment, with a model that is what we're trying to implement, which is pushing up and moving the ball quickly when they get the opportunity, and getting back hard on defence. On turnover, I should say.
On to our good mate Terence and his match day experience. Terence says, more of a statement than a question. I arrived in Melbourne on July the 2nd and will be here until early August. It was so enjoyable to attend the game in person, a game I would have had to wake at 5 a.m. to watch live from Brussels. At the risk of being a stereotype D supporter, my sister hosted me at the Jim Steins room and we watched the game in the warmth of the front row behind the glass with scones and jam and cream served at half-time. What I saw live was the treatment that Max received, finding himself on the ground more than once thanks to the thugs that were getting into him. I simply do not understand how at least one of 4 umpires cannot see that behaviour off the ball. Disgraceful. Off to the Carlton game on Saturday with my brother-in-law to watch from the long room. Life doesn't get better than this. And I couldn't agree. You couldn't get more Melbourne Football Club supporter than that, Terence. I hope you get the chance to get to the snowfields during the week in your Range Rover whilst enjoying a charcuterie board. And in all seriousness, welcome back to Australia and the MCG, Terence. As for the treatment of Max, I thought he was done so dirty by the umpires all day yesterday. He was, and you might not have seen this, big man, but he was held in nearly every, well, you might have seen this, he'd been held in nearly every rucking and marking contest. But there were multiple occasions when he was clearly blocked trying to get back into, you know, how he runs back to defence often when there's a free kick. He was blocked every single time and blocked and held by one of their smaller players or whatever while he was trying to get back into position to take that, you know, he always takes those intercept marks down back, but right in front of the umpire a number of times, and they did not once penalise. And I'm sure you can't block by holding the player who's running back to defence. He was done dirty. But and to be fair, I think Max has generally been treated better by the umps this season compared to previous years. But this week they completely turned a blind eye to a lot of things. It was a terrible treatment for the league's Premier Ruckman, who totally showed up one of his rivals for an All-Australian jacket. Big man, anything to add about Terence's experience this week or about Max's treatment?
It's great Terence, that you saw a win. That's awesome. 1 for 1. That's good going. So maybe Terence is the lucky amulet we needed. And
maybe you leaving, big man, was the luck. Maybe you need to stay in Southeast Asia.
And I don't think Terence is going to be going to Mount Buller while he's in Melbourne. If he's living in Brussels, I think he can drive to a decent snowfield pretty quickly, I suspect. So, I totally agree with him. I mean, it's been something I've been banging on about for ages, is the treatment that Maxi gets. And forgetting the umpires, what about the commentators pointing it out? They just give, it's all part of the game, the way they whack. I think it's actually not been as bad this year. He's not getting as many evident hits to the head, but that's partly because Goody is not playing him always as long down the line, and we're not playing the same method. So there's less opportunities for opponents to hit him in the head, but he's getting blocked off the thing. I don't know what happened. There were 3 times he went down, or at least twice. One where he got the free kick, another one where he's mysteriously on the ground. He is getting, and I don't think there's any love lost between him and Jerry. No. I thought it was just a phenomenal game, I thought, in many ways, from Max. I just loved his attitude. It felt to me like he wanted to put a statement, a flag down and say, Jerry, you're not, you're not good enough to hold my beer.
I know Max. It's not like we're best mates or anything, but I sort of, I've observed he just wants to succeed so much. He's so passionate. And he would want, I know he would want, and it's not that he said anything to me, but he would want to put, someone in their place and say, I am the top dog in this competition. And don't even think you got to, and I'm not, Sherry is good up and coming and he might get there, but you're not there yet, mate. I'm the top dog and this is my competition. You want to take that jacket? You got to come and get it. You got one over me in round 2. But you're not getting it there. You got to earn it, buddy, and have enjoyed the 3 weeks. Enjoy watching me for the next 3 weeks in the sidelines.
Yeah, hold my beer, buddy. And I've heard, I can't remember, maybe it was you said that I don't think Maxi was right in that game against North Melbourne. He had
Yeah,
some ankle,
I think
there was
so.
some talk about an injury or so,
I think
but it
we've made
felt like,
excuses for Max for quite a few games this year that he's crook.
yeah,
Didn't you
so
say
any
against
game that he
Adelaide?
doesn't, he's not best on
he's
ground.
not feeling well.
But I totally agree, and
Yeah.
he will get the All Australian, and that's 8 All Australian. That's a pretty elite, well, not pretty. It's a super elite group of footballers. They read them out.
There was a poll today that I participated in on X, and it was like which it had 4 players. Which players do you think's All Australian? Max was leading on 41%, but the others were Sherry, Cameron from Collingwood, and Grundy from Sydney. And I think besides the first game against Sherry, I think Max has beaten all of them in the games that he's played against them. So I don't know if that holds weight. But
and look, just on Maxi, we're not going to make finals, and that's terrible. But like, there's so much still to play for this season. Like, just Terence's sort of comments about how, going to the footy and watching and winning. It's great to go to the G. The comment was made by, I think, Melksham in that post-match presser on the ground that we played well against Adelaide. They're a top 4 team. We played well against the Suns. They're potentially a top 4 team.
We lost by a point to Collingwood, who were the top of the ladder.
The top of the ladder. And on Maxi, leaving that aside, we're not going to make finals, but we are seeing a generational player. There's only one player in my mind that comes close in my mind in the whole time I've followed Melbourne Footy Club is Robbie Flower, in terms of, and I'm not talking about even talent, but in terms of his importance to the footy club, his leadership, he's bigger than that. That's something spiritual about what he brings to the club. That we're watching a legend of the Melbourne Footy Club. I never got the opportunity to see Barassi play, but he's up there with Robbie Flower or with Barassi. There's not many other players like that. And by the way, it just reminds me of Vale, Brian Dixon. So that was terrible news during the week on that sort of legends of Melbourne Footy Club front. But Maxi, it's just another awesome performance. And as I said, almost 50% against this, arguably the second best ruckman in the AFL, the Thug. He had 31 hit-outs, 14 of which were to advantage. He wasn't rucking against some second stringer. He was, he was rucking against the next pretender to the crown.
That's right. Yeah, the one that a lot of halfway during the year they were saying that it's either Sherry or Max for the crown, and
so awesome performance. Great that Terence could. Hopefully, Terence is a lucky charm, and he's here to August. So some games that he'll get to, and so big shout out Terence, and I'm looking forward to going to the footy with you, Terence, to see us beat the Saints.
Is Terence still? Oh yeah, he's still here till August. So
we beat the Blues. Where is it?
Do we play? So we play the Saints at Marvel, and I think we play Bulldogs at Marvel, and we play West Coast as a home game at Marvel. So we've got a number of games coming up again at Marvel.
So maybe is it mathematically possible finals?
Why you think we have a better chance to win a Marvel because we don't have the wind. The wind helps us. We need a winter machine if we go to Marvel. Okay.
A winter machine. Okay.
So I'm assuming you didn't watch any of the Casey game, but I do have a bit of a.
Well, I've been trying to AFL in its wisdom. I thought I'd be able to watch without getting. So I watched the footy because I was able to borrow a friend's laptop with a VPN job. But I thought my plan was to watch the replay on a 24-hour delay. But AFL blocked that as well, which is pretty poor form. And I thought I'd be able to stream the VFL game, and so no, I couldn't watch that either. And I didn't get hold of the VPN until afterwards. But it was. I did read a little bit about it, and I tracked it on Demonland.
So the Casey Demons produced their most dominant and complete performance of the 2025 VFL season, dismantling Werribee by 76 points under the lights at Whitten Oval to keep their finals hopes burning bright. And while the Tigers stripped of much of their premiership core from last year, They struggled to keep pace. Casey's cohesion, intensity and depth were on full display. And despite conceding the opening goal of the game and losing veteran Tom McDonald to late AFL duties, the Demons quickly clicked into gear after a tightly contested opening 10 minutes. They gradually took control and never looked back, with a second-half avalanche of goals highlighting their superiority across every line. Jack Billings was the undisputed architect of the night, amassing 30 disposals, 7 marks, 4 clearances and 2 goals in a vintage performance. His class and composure set the tone for a Casey midfield that ran rampant. Jai Cully played arguably his best game since returning from WA, racking up 26 disposals and 5 clearances, while Blake Howes marked a strong return from concussion with an athletic and impactful 26-touch, 9 marks, 7 rebound, 50 outing off half-back. Up forward, Mitch Hardy was a constant threat, kicking 4 goals and consistently presenting as a marking target. He was well supported by live wire Ricky Mentha, whose 3 goals showcased his excitement and upside. Harry Sharp responded to his AFL omission with 2 goals and 23 possessions in a strong two-way display, while Bailey Laurie, Patrick Ireland and Noah Uze, despite inaccuracy, also hit the scoreboard. The ruck contest was owned by Will Varell, who stepped up in the absence of Tom Campbell with 31 hitouts, 19 disposals, 8 clearances and a goal. Varell continued to underline his rapid development and readiness for greater responsibility. Importantly for Melbourne's AFL list management, the contribution of younger names like Kynan Brown, 22 touches, Tajwa Woden, 18, and depth players such as Jed Adams, Luca Kenfield and Mentha Jr. Were promising signs for the club's future. The Demons built their lead methodically, edging ahead in the first half before exploding with 6 goals in the third term and another 5 in the final quarter. The defensive unit locked down Werribee, conceding just 3 goals after quarter time and ensuring that the match became a procession in the second half. The emphatic win gives Casey vital percentage and momentum heading into a critical final month of the regular season. They return to Casey Fields next week for a potential season-defining clash with Carlton. So that's that.
Terrific wrap up. And I read on Demonland that Kenfield took another monster pack mark where
I
he
did.
left,
I didn't see this one, but I saw the one from last week and it was a beautiful mark.
It was beauty. And it sounded like he got another one where he just split the pack apart. And it's like I'm hoping that he's a bit more than depth. He's obviously depth this year. But I think that I'm really going to be I can't wait to see him after a really proper full preseason. It was really unfortunate he got pneumonia. He hasn't even got close to a proper AFL preseason yet. So I hope he gets a injury-free preseason, gets a good preseason under his belt, and I've got a big watch on him for next season.
Speaking of injuries, Stephen May was laid out for our match against the Kangaroos, but should return to the side this week. And after missing 2 weeks with concussion and then illness, Harry Petty should also be available for the match against the Blue. Tom Sparrow, of course, who copped a late knock from Tristan Sherry, will miss the game against the Blues. So, big man, any idea who comes in and who goes out for this week's match against the Blues on Saturday night at the MCG? And keep in mind that the forecast is for a cold and wet night on Saturday night. Now, not that you'll have any concerns sitting in the pool watching in 38 degrees.
No, it won't be. It might be wet. It is monsoon season here, but it will not be cold. That is for sure. I've been hopeless all season about who comes in and who comes out. You got to think Petty comes back in. How about we just say who comes in? Petty comes in.
Well, we know Sparrow's out, but there's likely someone small has to come in. So maybe your boy Sparrow, not Sparrow, Spargo, the other SP player.
Sorry. Go on.
Yeah. Just as a half forward, maybe Spargo.
I think Spargo is a lock. He's a lock. He's got his critics, but he's by far and away, people moan about our kicking inside 50, of which, just while I think about it, there was 2-3 brilliant kicks in addition to the Harvey Langford one by Salo that hit Fritter on the chest, and another by, of all players, Jack Viney, our forward 50 entry. He's by far and away our best kick inside 50 Sparks, so he's got to come back in. Unless he got injured or they're still worried about where his injury's at, I'd be shocked if he's not selected this week. But of course, I'll be wrong on that. So the other one, I guess, is Petty. Petty comes back in, so 2 out.
There's May as well.
May, so you got 3.
T-Mac coming out just because he's the 4th man out.
Well, look, I hope that Lever comes out. I hope so. I'd be dropping Lever. Obviously, Sparrow's out. Someone like Caleb Windsor. It was a bit surprising in making him sub. I'd hope he gets a good run at it. They're the players you keep in. It's a tricky one, but Spargs I think will come in. That's the sort of play. Maybe Lever if May's got not 100% right. I think he got COVID. Did I read on Demon Lane?
Don't know. I just heard illness, but it's obviously enough to have him miss the game. It's not a sniffle.
Yeah. So, I guess he comes back in. So, you got to drop someone. But I expect I'm not sure who will get dropped, but I expect Sparks will come in. May will likely come in. Pets, it'll be an interesting one to see. So, there's probably less of an argument to bring Petty straight back in, to be honest. Well, not straight back in, to bring it back in.
So I was just someone on Demonland had said about Lever if he's dropped, it was Buck Naked said if you drop Lever, that Slugworth Morris will have him signed up to another team by Saturday morning.
Well, as I said before, I would drop him if he's on injury and if not injury on form. T-Mac is a better option at the moment than Lever, and he's faster. T-Mac is slow and he's faster than Lever. So, I can't see, again, I've been woeful on selection this year, so I can't see, personally how T-Mac would get dropped and Lever stays in. It just doesn't, because there's the argument about the future doesn't even hold with Lever particularly.
But this is Pates. A few people have got in a bit late to ask questions for the show, but I'll just go through. Pates about Lever says, to me, Jake doesn't look right physically. When the ball hits the deck, he looks slow and lost at sea. If he's carrying an issue, like an injury issue, that could be resolved by surgery. I'll be livid if the club opt to do it at the end of the season rather than just getting it out of the way now. He did have surgery recently, though. T-Mac can cover Jake. If May is not right, we can put Petty in his rightful position in defence. Management of players has been an issue for a long time. I'd hate for Lever to be another victim of it. He recently had surgery, though. So, I would hate that if there is something that he needs, get it done now. I mean, not playing finals.
Or even give him a spell. But as I said, T-Mac deserves his spot. And if the argument isn't about, or just deserves his spot in the team, but if the argument is about the future, it's really not a compelling argument to say, well, Lever is more significant to the future than, he's likely to play longer than T-Mac, but still it's, I'd be dropping him and for sure.
Now, a lot of people didn't read the post I obviously wrote on the podcast thread saying that there would be no live show tonight because you were away. Doug Reamer says, is the podcast live tonight or tomorrow? And Terrence, our mate Terrence, says, yes, I'm keen to know. Perhaps B-Man was not able to join from Cambodia and he said he would not do the podcast alone. I don't think I ever said that, but I did say that you're not there and we're just going to drop the podcast as we normally would, but not do a live. Peter Henning said, I gather Bidman can't connect or Andy can't tune in. Or can't connect to Andy. I can't tune in on any platform. I did say there's no live show.
But if you could put another post in that thread just to say
I did already.
It will be live. I actually miscalculated. I thought we could do it at 4, give you time to edit to fix up any of the lagging things, but I didn't. I did my math wrong, which I'm doing with the real and the US dollars here like crazy. I keep miscalculating. So I did my maths wrong on how long this show would go, and also that you don't have it would go past the 8 p.m. start time. So apologies for that as well.
What Big Man's talking about, he thought we could do the show and then at 8 o'clock, as we usually do, I could post the show as live. And I just thought, what's the deal? We'll do the show. The reason we're doing it this way because we weren't sure whether there'd be issues with connecting, whether it would drop out every time it works seamlessly. We haven't dropped once, so that's good. But I was worried that if we do live and it's, can you hear me? Can you hear me? No, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
it'll just be.
Well, we should have done it an hour earlier, then it wouldn't have been a problem. So I do apologise to people who were expecting it live, but it'll come on soon.
Dodo's Demon says, any links for the live stream? They are not appearing in the landing page for the podcast chat on the forum. I said in this thread, there's no live show. Anyway.
Can you put it on there?
I did. I
Let them
said
know
no
after
live
it's
show
through.
this week. Podcast will be released shortly. The Demons return to the MCG on Saturday night, this time as the away team to face an under siege Carlton. Both sides are locked on 6 wins from 17 games, separated by just 4 percentage points. While the media have turned up the heat on Blues coach Michael Voss, Carlton will be desperate to shift the spotlight with a win, having dropped their last 4 matches. Melbourne dominated this matchup, the matchup between the two teams from 2017 to early 2023, winning 8 straight games. But in the last 3 meetings, it's been heartbreak for the D's, with Carlton snatching all 3 nail-biters decided by a combined margin of just 7 points. And anyone who knows me knows that results like this are my absolute nightmare. This is my grand final this week. If we're not making finals, this game is my grand final, and there would be nothing better than to be the game that gets the coach sacked. Actually, no, I don't want him to be sacked. I want him to continue the way he's going, just exactly the way he's going for this Carlton team. Sorry to all my friends, not sorry. Big man, what do we need to do to beat the Blues this week?
Well, it's interesting because, like, in the last few years, we've been tracking each other in terms of game style. Contests, Voss has got a very contest-focused side. And so they'll be looking to win the contest. They'll have a massive emphasis on winning the pressure rating and winning, do it for Vossi and all of that. I think where we'll get them is actually, ironically, or perhaps not ironically, but in a positive sense, will be our ball movement and transition from back half. They're woeful at it. If we get on top in that aspect of the game, it'll go a long way to, them not being able to go with us. I think they've struggled big time with their fitness this year. I think that's been a huge issue for them. But they're moving the ball. They play a very similar style in some ways to the Roos. They have been trying to implement a sort of a more transition-based game as well. But I think we're doing it a lot more successfully, to be honest. I guess with where's McKay at? Is he playing?
No, he's not. He's not back. I think I saw on their injury list, which was the injury list for last week, it said 1 to 2 weeks. So could be back this week, but
May takes Curnow, and that helps because we're not going to be stretched defensively with the 2 talls if McKay's not playing. So I think we're very evenly matched, as those results that you just mentioned suggest. We've been very closely matched. I just think that we've been implementing a more modern game, if you for want of better expression, and more effectively than them. And I think we feel like a bit more cohesive footy team at the moment. They, the bit I've watched over the last few weeks of the Blues is that they look a little bit disjointed, and in some respects we're a bit lucky, aren't we? Because Voss has taken a fair bit of the heat that otherwise Goody might have.
All of the heat, because we had lost 5 in a row, and they've only lost 4, but they're ready to lynch him. The media and their supporters.
Of course, the Blues are big club and all of that. So huge game for big stakes, aren't they? Big stakes for Voss, less so for the Ds. I certainly hope we get a win, especially for you and your hatred for the Blues. But I'll be watching. I will be watching that game on delay, I think. So it's got some high stakes for it. And if we can towel them, then maybe Voss will get sacked on Monday morning. So there you go, the double bonus.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that's where we're going to leave it for tonight. We'll be back next week to break down that round 19 match against the Blues. Most likely we won't be doing a live show, so just putting it out there now. Big Man's still going to be on holidays. And thank you to our 5-star reviewer on Apple Podcasts. Thank you to Blinky Mite. And as always, your questions and comments form an absolute integral part of the show. So thank you to our Demoland posters who submitted those questions and comments. Thank you to D Minion, Travi14, Bigfoot, Spirit of Norm Smith, Phil C, Terrence, Buck Naked, Lazy, Smurf, 3183D, Mandalorian, Radish D, D Old Fart. A couple of other people chimed in a bit later. That was Wiley D, Old D, Red and Bluebeard, Buck Naked, Pates, Doug Reamer, and Peter Henning and Dodo's Demon. So thank you guys for listening, and thank you to my co-host, B-Man, thank you to you, our loyal listeners. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we'll read it out and give you a shout out next week on the show. Go Demons!
Red Leggers.
Come on, demons. Come on, demons. Come on, demons. Come on, demons. Come on, come on, come on, come on, demons. I've got this feeling